There's a fascinating story in the Catholic Bible. It's in one of those books that people say, well, those are the Catholic books. But in fact, these are from the ancient Jewish scriptures, and they're from the book of Maccabees. Now, in fact, one of the interesting things about this is it's in these books that we find the reason for Hanukkah. The story goes that in the time of the Maccabees, there was a king of this territory that was Greek in culture. And the king had decided that the world would be a better place if everyone believed the same religion. So basically they came up with this happy religion that everyone would be the same, and we all could believe essentially the same thing, and we could all worship the same God, or at least concept of God. Well, the problem is that they came into the Jewish territories, and although some Jews went along with this, there was a group of Jews that said no. And by law, they said, no, you have to go along with this. And specifically in Maccabees, there's a story of 7 men and their mother. And they were given a simple choice. The choice was simple. You see, Jews aren't allowed to eat pork. But since they were trying to build this one big happy religion, they just asked the Jews to have pork. And basically the decision was this: all we want you to do is eat some pork. If you don't eat the pork, we'll torture you to death. And so that was the decision. They could either eat the pork, but knowing that in doing so, they embraced this syncretic religion, this religion that's just a combination of all the religions, and reject the God of Abraham, the God of their fathers, or they allow themselves to be tortured to death. And the torture that they were given as a choice was something that would have Wes Craven going, oh, I'm not putting that in my movie, or what Roger Corman would say, if Wes Craven isn't going to do it, then I'm not going to do it. It makes the Texas Chainsaw Massacre look like Godzilla meets Bambi. They were severely tortured. I'm not going to go into the torture because it was so graphic and so disturbing. And that was the choice. Either we torture you to death, or you just eat pork and everyone will be happy. It's kind of like if they made a law here that said that everyone in the United States, or whatever country you may be watching this, has to have bacon and eggs for breakfast. And we'll say the Jews would turn around and say, but we aren't going to eat bacon for breakfast because it's against what we believe. And so the law came down, well then we have to torture you to death. What would you do if you were in that position? What would you do if you were in a position where you had to give up a very simple tenet of your faith in order to live in peace, or be imprisoned, or be tortured to death? You know, that kind of decision happens all around the world. It's going on in China, and it's been going on for years. In order for you to attend a true church, one that is not being watched over by the government, you have to break the law and go to an underground church. But if you're caught doing that, you can be imprisoned and tortured. Especially for Catholics, Cardinal Thwan was 15 years in a Chinese prison for doing that, for simply living his Catholic faith. And there are many, countless people, Christians in China and other countries, who are just simply living their faith by just going to a church that isn't officially recognized by the government. And understand, if you just allow the government to recognize the church, the government's happy because they can send in spies to see who is receiving communion and who is believing this. In the Soviet Union, if you were caught receiving communion, then you would be fired the next day. These little things that we think nothing of, little things such as eating pork if you were Jewish, going to Mass if you were Catholic, and so many other things leave us to ask the question, if we were in that position, what would we do? What would you do if suddenly it became illegal to go to Mass. God bless you.